Today's video is sponsored by Trading 212, where you can invest in real stocks and ETFs for free. And with a special promo code, you can get a free share worth up to 100 Great British pounds. The first 212 people that use the promo code will receive the free share. Hi guys, it's ASBYT, and this is the iPhone 11 Pro Max. I've been using it on and off for the last couple of weeks since its release, so it's time to give you my full review. There has been so much to love here, but there's also been some teething issues that you should know if you're looking to possibly buy it. So we've got some pros, we've got some cons, we've got, well, the truth. So without further ado, let's get straight to it.
Y'all see me flying, never drop down, smoking high, I am not round, no denying what I got now, keep an eye out, keep it locked down, see me flying.
Before we continue, a quick word from our video sponsor. Trading 212 is a great way to own an actual share of your favourite company. In the app, you'll find the stocks of Microsoft, Apple, Netflix, Nike, Tesla, and many, many more. Trading 212 democratizes the financial markets by letting anyone invest in thousands of real stocks and ETFs totally free. All you have to do is simply download the app, open an account in about 3 minutes, and start investing without paying any fees or commissions whatsoever. Sign up and use the code ASBYT to get your filthy mitts on a free share worth up to £100. And remember, the first 212 people that use the promo code will receive the free share. Right, so this video is going to be staggered into different segments where we pretty much cover everything to do with the device. It's not going to be spec laden. I pretty much covered all of that in my first videos, my unboxings and early reviews for the 3 different devices, which you can go and see. So firstly, we're going to touch on design, and not just my overall first impressions, obviously, but how the actual design has affected performance and use in the 2 weeks that I've had it. Right, so starting with that controversial rear camera design, I'm going to be deadly honest, I've completely got used to it. And the changes to the Apple logo, positioning, etc. Now when I compare it to last year's model, the XS Max, that now looks a little bit strange. Also, due to the frosted back compared to the glossy from last year, it does look, in my opinion, much better. It's more of a head turner, and I've enjoyed being out and about with it. The same, unfortunately, can't be said for the front design, which is identical again to last year's, and it's now a 3-year-old model. And in this ever-changing smartphone world, 3 years with the same design, come on, Apple. Because I have been using a lot of bezel-less Android phones in the last year or so, when watching movies, playing games, I have noticed the notch more than perhaps if you were a standard iPhone user. If that's all you know, you'll probably be fine. If the features don't quite grab you, maybe wait a year, because it's highly likely we will see a revamped design in 2020. But of course, all of that is just personal opinion, and the majority of that won't really affect your day-to-day use. But the size of the display, same as last year's, I find it too wide. I don't have a problem with the length of it, but especially if you're going to be using a case with it, as soon as you whack that on, it is just too wide for one-handed use. I made the exact same comment about the OnePlus 7 Pro earlier in the year. One-handed use and reaching right across to the left-hand side to go back on certain apps is, well, with a case on especially, is a complete write-off. And I definitely think it's an area that smartphone manufacturers need to look at. Now, we touched on the notch in terms of usability, so I may as well continue now and get onto the display. And firstly, you must know, it is a truly brilliant AMOLED display. It's punchy, it's vibrant, there's lovely contrast there, and I certainly feel the notch and the bezels in general are far less intrusive than they are on the standard iPhone 11 Pro. Because you have that larger display, it has a completely different feeling. So on the whole, I have absolutely no complaints with the actual display panel, but I'm starting to get that higher refresh rate bug. While I felt earlier in the year it was a trend that was going to continue, but I didn't see it as necessarily essential for smartphone use right now. Once you've used those 90 and 120 Hz AMOLED display panels, it's very, very difficult to go back to 60 Hz. And I wish, and I feel they should have done this year with the iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max. Possibly when they change the whole look and design of that front next year or the year after, they will then make that jump, but by then they will already be, as Apple tend to be these days, a little bit behind in the hardware design area. And while this next point doesn't refer to the display panel as such, it's to do with viewing media, so I thought I'd throw it in here. You will still have a problem viewing Quad HD or 4K video content on YouTube, and that's not to do with the actual panel, like I said, it's more to do with software that Apple use or don't use. It's a lack of OS level support for Google's VPN codec, which is of course used by YouTube. As a result, when you're streaming YouTube content, the max resolution you can view it in is 1080p. No 1440p, no 4K, and that may be a massive thing for some people. It may be not really that important to others. So it's just a point you'll need to decide for yourself. Next up, we're talking battery, and this is an area that the iPhone 11 Pro Max excels in beyond my expectations. It truly is incredible battery life, especially when you consider the battery cell size. It is, if we're rounding up, around 4000 mAh. The figure is actually 3968 mAh, I believe. We'll round up to 4000, we'll make it easy. For the size, what they do with the hardware and the software combined with the battery is incredible. For the first time for me using an iPhone, I get through the day absolutely no problems whatsoever. Sometimes if I'm not massively heavily using it on a certain day, I'll easily get into the next day and have 20-30% in the morning when I kind of get up. So that is really, really impressive. Now we're going to jump back to that controversial triple camera array on the rear. And like I said, I've got used to the design, but if you are really struggling, but you want this phone, you will need to know that the camera is at least worthy of that sacrifice. And we will break it down shortly, but overall, it's a very, very impressive camera. It is one of the best camera setups on a phone today. But within that, as you would expect, there are some pros and cons. We'll start with the pros. Incredibly punchy, vivid, really beautiful photos you can take with the iPhone 11 Pro Max. Great for social media, great for vloggers. They're very sharp, they pop. You combine that with the display as well when you're viewing those photos. It does look pretty amazing. I still, to this day, Apple tend to produce smartphone cameras that are far too saturated for me. When I look at photos of myself, as you well know if you've been on this channel before, I always say I look like a tomato, but it's not just me. When I look at other YouTubers or other just photos taken with the iPhone series, especially last year and this year, to me, it's far too warm to the point of looking almost orange or red in the face, but those photos will certainly stand out. So it depends kind of where you see that. If you are of a richer skin complexion, it's gonna enhance that. If you're a fairly pale person and you want to add a little bit of color, then it will probably benefit you. But I think edge detection is pretty poor still, especially if you've got a lot of stuff going on in the background. It tends to have real trouble picking parts of the edge of your face and hair, etc. out. The wide angle lens was a must addition for me this year. Ever since they've been introduced on the Android side, I've fallen in love with them. They are absolutely incredible to capture those landscapes, those city shapes. City shapes? What are they? Pop in the shapes. Cityscapes when I'm traveling. Wide angle lenses are now a must. You also get the third telephoto lens. There's nothing really new here from last year. You get the 2x optical zoom and then digital zoom up to 10 times. I would have liked to have seen them add maybe a 5x optical zoom, keeping that same clarity and sharpness in that 5 times, as opposed to when you enhance it digitally, you do lose some of that clarity. So that's a shame, but I don't use a telephoto lens that much. You might. Night mode is a nice addition this year, and it is something that happens automatically as soon as the phone senses that you are going into an area of low light and you're trying to take a photo. It will automatically have a longer exposure to allow more light in to take a brighter photo. And I like the way it kind of adapts and can tell. It's not the best night mode on a smartphone. Well, it's subjective. I still feel the Huawei P30 Pro, for example, takes a more vivid and better photo in terms of being more eye-catching. It's technically a little bit artificial looking, but you can see far more details. It's much sharper. But some would say the iPhone 11 Pro Max takes a more natural nighttime shot. Video quality has generally been a very strong point for Apple, and it's no different here. It's, in my opinion, probably the best smartphone camera in terms of video quality. 4K at 60 frames a second, both on the rear and on the front camera, is epic. I don't believe there's any other smartphone that has 4K at 60 on that front camera currently today. 4K at 30, sure, not 4K at 60. So if you want to slow that footage down in edit with those 30 extra frames per second, you will have far smoother footage. Speaking of slow-mo mode, It's not the best on the market, however. No crazy high frame rates like we've seen from Samsung and Huawei, etc. 1080p resolution at 240 frames per second is the max frames per second you can use. It still looks good, but there are better in my opinion. One thing that still irritates me about iPhones compared to Android phones in the camera department is that the settings for the camera are still in the settings app and not an easy to get to built-in feature within the camera app. So you have to come out of the camera app, go into the settings app, change your settings. It just seems a bit bizarre that Apple still do this. And because I use both Android phones and iPhones, I do notice that change when I jump between the two. To be able to do it in-house within the camera app is so much easier and quicker. I have noticed a slight speed improvement on Face ID on the 11 over the XS Max. I still wish that they had an in-display fingerprint scanner as well for those times when it's on a desk and you don't really want to have to kind of lift the phone and bring it up to your face, or you're trying to check your phone on the sly so that your wife doesn't clock you on your phone again. Always happens to me. You can kind of just do it with your fingerprint and then you can just glance. Not the end of the world, but just another point I thought I'd make. Now onto Apple's brand new A13 Bionic chip. It is and will be well into next year one of, if not the fastest chipsets on the market right now. It is absolutely blazing. The benchmarks prove that when it's compared to a lot of other Android devices currently right now. And like I mentioned in my first review, it will continue that trend into early next year. There will be phones coming out and Apple's previous SoC will still perform incredibly well. I've experienced no lags, no freezes, no glitches other than a couple of those bugs that I mentioned already. And a lot of that is down to that A13 chip, not McCain's or McDonald's. Such a bad joke. I apologise. So now we're going to jump onto the operating system, or iOS 13, that has dropped on the latest range of iPhones. And on the whole, it's pretty decent. It's fluid. It's really easy to use. It is quite buggy, if I'm being honest. A lot of people have found problems connecting Bluetooth devices to the iPhone, not in terms of actually connecting, but dropouts and disconnections. I've noticed it a few times, not enough to really grind my gears, but enough to kind of not think that those complaints are invalid. There are, of course, the standard pros and cons of iOS, the fact that you can't customize it, the apps will stay as they are, there's no app drawer. As soon as you move an app, another one will fill its place, so you can't sort of create individual areas within your display or drag them down from the top, which is still an issue with iOS. I would prefer you to be able to, especially on large phones, be able to order your apps from bottom to top so that you can have gaps at the top and not at the bottom where your thumbs are. It seems obvious, but Apple, obviously there's a reason why they do it. Who knows? Tim Cook? Get on the buzzer. Get on the old iPhone 11 Pro Max. Let me know. Speakers are also some of the best I've seen on a smartphone to date. They are stereo, they are rich, they're loud. Movies, gaming, they are great. Now the ease of use in my day-to-day life, and I have connected up to my MacBook, my AirPods, my Powerbeats Pro, my Apple Watch, and as you probably well know, the Apple ecosystem is second to none. Do I miss other elements of certain Android phones out there? Yes. I would have to hold my hands up and say there are elements of those phones that I do miss that I don't get on this. Equally, there are some great features on this phone, and when you connect it up to that ecosystem, it is expensive, don't get me wrong, but it's incredibly easy to use, and that is one of their big selling points and will continue to be. Until somebody else comes out with an ecosystem that can match it, Apple will always produce sales figures that are enhanced because of it. And that, I think, is that. Let me know what you think in the comment section below of the iPhone 11 Pro Max. Is it something you're interested in? Have you already got one? And if so, what do you think of it? As always, these videos do tend to take quite a long time to make for you. So if you did enjoy it and found it helpful, make sure you drop a like and subscribe if you're new to the channel and love everything tech, pretty much daily content here on YouTube. I love you and leave you. I'll see you in the next one. ASBYT, peace out.
Drop down, smoking high, I am not round. I'm not round, no denying what I got now. Keep an eye out, keep it locked down.